And welcome back to the Factor Uncensored. Opening statements began in the trial of former Houston officer Gerald Goines. He was involved in the deadly shooting street raid back in 2019. The state argues that Goines fabricated, lied, and made up evidence to obtain a no-knock warrant on Regina Nicholas and Dennis Tuttle's home. However, the defense claims that Goines acted within his duties. My next guest has more details on the case, and in that case, those two victims we mentioned, both were killed. And joining us now here on The Factor Uncensored, we have with us attorney Charles Adams, also a former police officer. Charles, we have Gerald Goines' case beginning today in Harris County. And of course, we remember him from the 2019 Harding Street shooting. Tell us what that case is all about and what the prosecutors are trying to prove in court.
What happened here was you had a neighbor allegedly make a false report to HPD Narcotics that man named Tuttle sold her daughter heroin. And then there was a false allegation. And initially, this former HPD narcotics detective, Gerald Goines, alleged that he had a criminal informant make a purchase of drugs. And then later, he alleged that he himself made the purchase. Both of those turned out to be lies. But the allegation was the foundation that he used to obtain a no-knock search warrant of the home. And it led to a chain of events where the homeowners, the residents, both him and his wife and their dog, all lost their life in a shower of gunfire coming from Houston narcotics officers.
And it's my understanding, Charles, it was over 40 bullets fired by Houston police officers, and the victims were Regina Nicholas and Dennis Tuttle.
Right. And the allegation is, in fact, the argument, now he has a top shelf defense attorney in Nicole DeBoard, very competent, very skilled. I was not a fan of the base argument of her opening statement, but I also recognize that sometimes you're forced as a defense attorney to try to make lemons from lemonade, and lemonade from lemons, and it's really at times just not possible. But our argument today was basically the Dennis Tuttle brought his killing, his common law spouse's killing, and the killing of his dog. He brought it on by knowingly firing at officers after they identified themselves. Now, in my opinion, that dog doesn't hunt, right? I don't think he gets anywhere on that, or they get anywhere on that. And I think it's a bad argument. But I'll admit, I don't know what other argument you can make, right? So what you have is you have fraud to get the warrant. You have the worst kind of warrant, in my opinion. A no-knock warrant should never be used simply trying to catch people with drugs.
And Charles, really quick, when it comes to Gerald Goines, how much damage did he do to HPD? How much damage did he do to law enforcement? We had case after case kicked out, not related to this, as a result of his actions of lying.
Well, a tremendous amount of damage in an unusual and improbable turn of events. During the social justice movement summer of 2020, HPD actually got dragged in because of course the centerpiece of that, he happened to just also have been framed by Gerald Goines when he was in Houston. So you have this, all of a sudden you have this officer kill someone in Minneapolis, right? Which of course involved a Houstonian. He was from Houston.
George Floyd.
HPD gets drug into it, right? Because HPD framed that same guy, the victim of the Minneapolis police bad acts years before, and Gerald Goines did that. So it brought a crosshair on this city, but it also just made, in a time when law enforcement is, I think, frequently unfairly demonized, and we had that defund the police and abolish prisons nonsense, as if we pretend there's not violent criminals that need to go in prison. We had a cacophony of voices that were bolstered by his bad acts. We had a bunch of cases overturned, but it goes to the heart of my long-held position that if you as a person have a personal use amount of drugs, I don't care what kind of drug, if it's a personal use amount, it shouldn't be a felony. It shouldn't be anything more than a traffic ticket. And at the worst case, you should put people in rehabs. Coupled with the fact that if you're involved in dealing drugs, that it should be a different type of investigation. Whereas now we're just throwing people in prison, locking away the key, and we're actually incentivizing people to cook methamphetamine, people to import fentanyl, which both should always be illegal, instead of allowing people to go buy cocaine or buy heroin, which albeit are bad drugs, but they're nothing like fentanyl or methamphetamine, and they could buy them safely and it could be taxed. Our drug war policy is wrong. It's been wrong for a very long time. It's a vehicle to oppress black men largely, and it's broken. And this is the zenith of the fracture, right? The fracture between law enforcement and a public that's largely not committing victim crimes, but are having their cars searched and torn apart, instead of our police energies being focused on the actual damn criminals, the people breaking into houses, shoplifting, stealing, assaulting, robbing, murdering people, because that's all police should do. And it really is at the bottom of the chain of things that they do. Writing tickets to generate revenue, enforcing prohibition to generate revenue. And Goines, he was a celebrated narcotics officer. And the question is, how did anyone know? Right. I think it's a horrible indictment for HPD, and also a department I did not work for as an officer, but a department that I actually participated in setting up their police foundation. I was one of the original board members and sat on that board up until I became a judge. And it's a huge black eye, and they really need a conviction. And I think our district attorney is going to get it, and I think he'll spend the rest of his life in prison.